Some situations in the world, some conflicts, they have this gravitational pull that's just almost impossible to escape. No matter how hard everyone tries to move on, they just keep pulling the major powers back into their orbit. Today, we're going to dive deep into one of those scenarios and really explore the powerful forces at play.
Okay, so for years now, a huge theme in American foreign policy has been this idea of a pivot, right? This desire to shift focus away from these long, incredibly costly wars and entanglements in the Middle East. The stated goal has always been to recalibrate, to move on. But as we're about to see, it's never really that simple.
And that's the real tension here, isn't it? Despite this goal to disengage, the possibility of a direct conflict between the United States and Iran threatens to do the exact opposite. We're talking about a conflict that could drag not just America, but literally the entire world back into a brand new, very dangerous spiral. So let's start by looking at what that first immediate shockwave would be.
To really get a grip on the stakes here, you have to start with the economy, the economic fallout, because this wouldn't just be some localized event. It would set off a chain reaction, a domino effect that would hit every single corner of the globe.
And to understand that economic risk, you really only have to know about this one tiny little waterway, the Strait of Hormuz. It's not just a shipping lane. You have to think of it as the planet's single most critical artery for oil. About a fifth, a full 20% of the world's daily oil supply flows right through this one narrow channel.
So what happens if there's a direct military conflict? Well, it's pretty much a guarantee that this choke point gets shut down. Imagine a sudden, catastrophic blockage in that artery we just talked about. The flow of oil could slow to a trickle or just stop completely, almost overnight.
And the fallout from that? It is crystal clear. This wouldn't just be a spike in gas prices. This is the kind of event could trigger a full-blown global economic collapse. And the key phrase to remember is spare no nation. This crisis would have nowhere to hide. It would be everywhere. But, and this is a big but, that economic disaster, well, that's just the opening act. That initial shock would very quickly ignite what you can only describe as a geopolitical firestorm, one that would be incredibly hard, maybe even impossible to contain. Yeah, you gotta understand, this wouldn't be some simple, clean, two-sided war. No way. Alliances that have stood for decades would be strained, maybe even broken. At the same time, you'd see proxy forces activated all over the region, opening up all these new battlefronts. And the conflict? It would almost certainly go global through asymmetric warfare, reaching far, far beyond the Middle East. And that word, firestorm, it's not an exaggeration. It is the perfect metaphor. It really captures the uncontrollable, self-sustaining, and just all-consuming nature of what this thing could become. A fire that doesn't respect any borders.
So, we've talked about money and politics, but now we have to talk about the real cost, the most devastating part of any war. The human cost. And in this scenario, honestly, the scale is it's staggering to even think about. Just look at that number, millions. We aren't talking thousands here, or even hundreds of thousands. We are talking millions of people forced from their homes, creating a humanitarian and refugee crisis on a scale that's almost impossible to imagine. And this isn't just another sad chapter in a history book. We're talking about a potential scale of suffering that we may not have seen in our lifetime, maybe not in the entire modern era. It's a chilling warning about a catastrophe that could completely redefine our world. Okay, so after laying out this incredibly grim picture of what could happen, the analysis takes a turn. It pivots from describing this potential catastrophe to outlining the only path to actually avoid it.
And what it all boils down to is this: a choice. A stark choice between two very, very different paths. On one side, you have the path to war, which leads to mutual destruction. And on the other, you have a path of dialogue, a path focused on de-escalation. It's a critical turning point, and the decision made here would have consequences for generations.
And this brings us to one of those timeless truths, right? A piece of wisdom you hear again and again for a reason. Wars are so easy to start, but they are notoriously incredibly difficult to end. That first decision to go in is often the simplest part. It's everything that comes after, the unforeseen consequences, the challenge of finding an exit that proves to be so catastrophic.
So when you put it all together, you weigh the economic collapse, the political firestorm, the unbelievable human cost, the conclusion is pretty much unavoidable. Military action just isn't a viable option. The only way forward, the only path toward any kind of stable future, is one of restraint, dialogue, and diplomacy. And that leaves us with one final, pretty big question to think about. We always talk about the high cost of military action, the cost of war. But everything we've looked at here really forces us to flip that question on its head. When the alternative is a global catastrophe, what is the true cost of restraint? What is the real value of pulling back from the brink?